let's fire away, Sam.
Great. Thank you, Martin. Well, I mean, today's really about two things, really. One is to celebrate the partnership between NaDCAS and Care England, and the second area really is just to have a discussion about how we can work together and what the priorities are really for dementia care from your end and also from our end, and how we can drive change, because I think that's what we're both here for. It's definitely what I'm here for, and what NaDCAS is all about is around change and positive change, and nurturing providers to improve.
Yeah, indeed. And one of the things that I'm delighted about this partnership with NaDCAS is because we have got significant challenges in the care sector. If you look at care homes, the vast majority of people who live in care homes have some form of dementia. I think we should also acknowledge that as people with learning disabilities and autism become older, many of them also live with dementia. So dementia is the biggest challenge for the care sector. Now, one of the things that I think is great about the NaDCAS approach is that you have delivered some really brilliant training, but it comes from practice. So it has been developed out of people's experience of working in care services. And I also like the fact that it is accredited training. And one of the challenges for our sector is that there is a lot of training and development resources out there, but no way of identifying what is really good and the impact it makes. Now, an accreditation scheme really, I think, transforms things because it gives people the surety that this is good quality training, and also that it is applied in a uniformed way across all those who deliver it. So that was one of the reasons why I was really pleased to develop this partnership with NaDCAS.
Thank you, Martin. I mean, from our point of view, it's really about trying to share with providers what good looks like, because I do think it's a bit of a wild west out there around, and the purpose of NaDCAS is to bridge that gap between current best practice and the evidence base, and actually doing that work on the ground. And I do think that care providers are, sometimes they don't know where to turn. They don't know where to look for where good or best practice is in dementia care. And that's what the NaDCAS framework is all about. And what we've developed, the framework that is freely accessible to all dementia care providers across the UK, is something that pull, from fantastic organisations like Bradford University, Worcester, Stirling, UCL, York, St John's, Exeter, pulls it all together into a framework that the care providers can access, and then get a good understanding of what they need to be doing to improve. That's what we want to be doing, is sharing that good practice and making care providers know what they should be doing to develop their dementia care practice now and in the future. And obviously, as new research and as new evidence comes into the ether, then our role is to pull that together and then distribute that to care providers, because our approach is around nurture. Is one of the real core values for us, is around nurturing providers to develop. It's not about browbeating that they've done this wrong and they've done that wrong, and it's a very much a solution focused approach where we're trying to develop and nurture providers to be the best that they can be.
Yeah, and I also really like the fact that you are very evidence-based and you draw down a lot of evidence from different experts in the field. And I also like the approach which says, as things develop, we're going to develop these frameworks and these practices. So it's very much a moving and developing agenda. It's not all set in stone. And I think one of the things that I would encourage people to do is, as they start using the framework, to give you feedback on how it's
Absolutely.
working, the impact it's having. And that's another thing that I think is really great, is that it gives people an opportunity to try different things and then to see the impact. And this framework is very much based in the development of practice. And so it really does show that if you use the framework, if you use it as an ongoing resource, you can make a big difference to people's lives. And of course, it's not only about the people you support, but it also is a much better way of working for people who are in the care sector and our colleagues who are working so hard. If they've got a really clear understanding of how they can support people, that's a better experience for them as well as for the people they support.
Absolutely. Yeah, we want to focus on a better experience of care for the people living in the care homes, of course. But you're totally right, Martin, that actually a better experience of caring for the carers and for the teams is really important as well, because we both know that the strength in the care provided is the strength of the team that is providing that care. And again, it's one of these things that there isn't much guidance out there. There's support from some organisations, but particularly around dementia care. This is where we want to really try and provide that advice, support, and guidance for care teams around what good looks like. And bottom line is we want the people accessing care and the families to have confidence in that the care of care being provided. And obviously the NaDCAS framework and the aims of the accreditation scheme is that it's about having a nationally recognised quality mark for dementia care for providers that they can put in front of families, and they can tell once they've gone through the accreditation process that they're meeting a good standard of dementia care, or even working towards an exceptional standard of dementia care, and that families and the people moving into care then have that confidence that there's a good level of care being provided.
Yeah, and I think, Sam, that's a really important point that I hope the care providers will communicate to families and to people around their care service that, we take dementia very seriously. We want to work hard to make sure that our experience and the people that you love who are living in our care homes are getting the very best they possibly can. And it's also important to recognise that one of the things that this framework is about how you respond to individuals. So yes, there are things that are about how dementias might manifest themselves according to the particular diagnosis of dementia. But then, of course, you have to overlay on that, how is this person experiencing dementia? And I think the framework really helps colleagues to know some of the theories, but also how to put it into practice and to personalize it to the individual they're supporting.
Indeed. Everybody experiences dementia differently, and person-centered care is one of these phrases that is very easy to say but very, very difficult to do with resources as they are in some homes. And the bottom line really is understand the person. The dementia is part of that individual. That's not doubtable, but the person comes first, and the way that they choose the care that they should be receiving is really, really important. And personally, my professional interest as an occupational therapist is around supporting those people who are living with dementia who are more advanced. And there's a risk that their choices are taken away from them. So best practice around consent and around mental capacity is really, really important in order to support those people to live well, and to be supported in a way that still provides them choice and still gives them still provides person-led care even as the dementia advances.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. Just because a person is living with dementia should not mean that they are cut off from making decisions, and also that their decisions may want to change. So one of the things that is a problem, often people are seen as having dementia, and then suddenly services take away their right to choose or their right to make decisions. And this framework helps people to enable people to make those decisions, even if they're living with dementia. And that is, I think, an important part of the framework. It centers itself in the person, but it also centers itself in the rights of the person to make informed choices and to be helped and supported to continue to make choices despite the fact they're living with dementia.
Indeed, indeed. The other area I wanted to focus on as well, I think the work that we've been doing, developing the framework, rolling it out, working with providers, is the importance of leadership. And one of the 9 areas of best practice that we focus on when we start working with the provider is vision, culture, and leadership. And I want people who are listening to this conversation to obviously to take away something of value from it. And one of the things I'd like to get across is that having passionate leadership, people who are fascinated by people, bottom line, but having leadership who care about dementia care, but also care about the relationships that are developed between their team, and how teams are encouraged to participate in engagement is really, really important. So I just wanted to make the point of the leadership of organisations, whether it be the board level leadership, but obviously the home managers. The dementia care is such a critical part of how care homes care now, because more people living with dementia. I think that the current statistics is it's 70% plus of people moving into care homes now are living with some form of dementia. And so the leadership of organisations need to take note of the importance of delivering dementia care, and not just saying that we're specialists in dementia care, that actually they need to be doing a lot more about it to enhance the care that they're providing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Sam. Leadership and culture are the 2 defining things that differentiate brilliant services from other services. And I think, having that leadership, having that a sort of approach which is person-centered. And of course, the other thing about that is some of the principles that you might apply to somebody living with dementia, if you also apply them to how you work with your colleagues, that shows mutuality and respect, just as you would want to show that with the person you support. You need to show it with your staff. And I think that that role in leadership, both at home manager level, but also, as you said, a board level, this needs to be the absolute center of services, because you're so right. The majority of people living in care homes have some form of dementia. This is not a nice to have. This is absolutely essential to the work that we do. This is absolutely a core part of delivering good quality care in care homes. And I think the leadership and the culture piece are the definers of how people will engage with this framework.
Martin, can I ask around the partnership? How do you want the partnership to develop over time?
Well, I think this is a great partnership for Care England because, as I've said, dementia is a big challenge, and it is what care services do. And I want this partnership to be very much about you bringing your expertise, us bringing our networks and connections to the sector, this constant dialogue to make sure that everything is completely changing and developing with changing practice and with changing evidence. And so the partnership will be about us bringing our our various strengths, putting them together, and then empowering and enabling the sector to deliver the best possible support to people living with dementia. And that was the why I was really interested in framing this partnership, because I know that you've all got this wonderful expertise in how to support people living with dementia. And we've got these amazing networks of care homes and care services. And I wanted to bring those two elements together, because ultimately, I think bringing our strengths together strengthens the sector and improves the
Yeah,
outcomes to people we support.
I totally agree. I think, the reach that Care England has, and the framework that we've got, that combined equals some real positive change in the future, I think. Um, the, the other areas I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit is around the developing new care homes and the importance of the environment. A couple of the areas of best practice um, uh, that really has come from a lot of work from the University of Stirling is how important the environment is for new buildings being developed at the moment across the sector. Obviously, there's a massive range of stock in the care homes that are currently active. There's lots of older buildings, but I wanted to talk specifically about the importance of the environment for the people living in care homes, and that when providers are developing new homes, they should really be looking at the current best practice. They should really be looking at some of the research around even simple things like lighting, how people access space, how people access the natural light. And one of my bugbears is around people living with dementia often being, for some reason, I have no idea why, go onto are placed on the top floor, and they have less access to natural light, less access to the outside. And I wanted to really reinforce that as an important point going forward. And again, the partnership is important for us because of the reach that Care England has, but also the influence on developing new care homes, and how important it is that new care homes are built for the people that are living in them, rather than just cramming in as many rooms as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think also you make a really important point, Sam. There is a lot of evidence on the importance of the built environment, and that evidence is very much at the heart of the framework that you have. And it's really important that environmental issues are working to support the person living with dementia rather than working against them. And I also think one of the other things that we should acknowledge, that even if you're not in a new build, you might, for example, be able to use color in different ways. Simple things like, for example, changing toilet seats so that you're really clear that they're differentiated in color from the actual toilet really helps a person living with dementia. Changing also the way in which doors are presented can be really powerful and really support people to live well. And there are a myriad of things that we need to do with new builds, and we need to be constantly refining our practice there so that every new build is an improvement on the last. But we also need to be giving people who are not in new build services some of the simple things they can do to improve the quality of life for people living with dementia, and to reduce their confusion so that it is a best possible environment for them to live well.
Yes, and there are some very simple things, specifically, without going too much into detail, specifically around lighting. So many homes are poorly lit, and this affects the people living in those homes, but it does also affect the teams as well. All they have to do is invest in a few light bulbs sometimes, just to brighten the space up, in order for people people to be experiencing their environment a little bit better, and also for the teams to be even just a little bit more alert. I think it's 150 lux, something like that, which you can download a light meter on your phone and see the light levels in your care home. So yeah, small little changes like that can have a really, really big impact, and relatively little investment as well. You can.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the things I always say is that every care home has a maintenance budget. So when they're using that maintenance budget, make sure that the things you do, which might be seen as maintenance, are also seen as upgrades. And things like lighting is so important. And you can make small changes, as you say, to improve the lighting. But in the new builds, you might think about things like circadian lighting, which is really making a difference to people's sleep patterns, etc. So I
Yeah.
think there are a million things that new builds can do, but there are also a lot of things that people who are in existing buildings can do to improve the quality of life of the people they support.
I agree. When I speak to providers, I do hear sometimes that managers that are running homes that are older buildings, there might be an old house or an old vicarage or something like that. Sometimes they do think, oh, well, it would be lovely if we had a new build, but actually there are some relatively simple changes that you can do. Even decluttering environments is another thing that can be quite simple, to make the space more airy, more light. And the other area which is more focused on positive risk and what I would call therapeutic risk taking, is enabling people to access the outside, so opening the doors, as it were, to the outside, so people can freely access open spaces. There's some fantastic work being done out there around people living with dementia and the importance of improving their well-being by accessing natural light and outside spaces. So opening the doors. Majority of care homes will have outside spaces, and it's important that they use those spaces, and they assess and manage the risk and make these spaces as safe as possible for people. But the importance of positive risk and therapeutic risk is very much at the heart of the framework, because I would always say that there's a risk of doing something, but there's more of a risk of not doing it.
Yeah, I absolutely think you're so right, Sam. And I want to shift the dial from being risk averse to being risk aware. And it's about how you manage risk. And actually, we all manage risk in our own lives. And people living with dementia should not be so constrained that they can't go outside. And going outside can have such a positive impact on people, and it can enable them to live well. And that needs to be central to the way in which you deliver care and support, and also personalized to the individual. There are lots of people who may have spent their working life outside, and if you then say, well, you can't go out, it will do so much to their to their feeling of well-being. So we've got to start thinking differently about how we use lighting, how we make sure people have access to sunlight, how people have access to fresh air and being out in the garden as much as possible.
Absolutely. The last area I really wanted to focus on is supporting people who live with distress. I think one of the areas that I see gaps in, which is partly around knowledge and understanding, but also partly around teams having a better understanding of people's lived experience, is trying to interpret people's distress differently. So rather than seeing people as aggressive or potentially labeling them with labels that can change the way that other team members see that person, is to try and interpret people's distress as them searching for a need and searching for a feeling. And I think as people become more advanced, living with dementia, obviously things like confusion can increase, and searching for people or calling out for loved ones can increase. And I think one of my passions is around trying to support teams to try and understand why someone is becoming distressed, and rather than being reactive to that distress, One of the really fantastic tool, there's free tools out there, there's training you can go on as well, is around qualitative observation. So that is around observing the person in the space that they live in to try and interpret what they might be searching for when they're becoming distressed. And it's one thing that is so important for people living with dementia as they become more advanced, is to try and understand what their lived experience is in order to then support the care, support them in a way that is in line with their lived experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes from understanding the person and trying to get to the
Yeah.
root cause of the distress. A good little anecdote. I went into a care home, and apparently there was a lady who had been quite distressed. And then suddenly they realized she'd had dogs all her life, and she was worried about where the dogs were and had they been fed. And so people then, first of all, they had a small dog, a toy dog they brought in, and that really helped. But then they were engaging her in conversations about her dogs. And suddenly that reduced her anxiety and stress level.
Mm.
Now, if they hadn't really understood that person and known that person's life history, they would never have known that that distress had a cause. And once you know the cause, you can then try and mitigate it and support
Yeah.
people. And I
Yeah.
think it goes back also to something that's at the heart of the framework, which is understanding the person and then getting to a point where you work with the person rather than against them, and to see
Yeah.
the causes rather than the manifestations is the really important thing. And that is central to the framework.
Yeah, I do think that if you're working in dementia care, working in care in general as well, you need to be interested in people. You need to be fascinated by people, because in order to care for them in a compassionate way, and an empathetic way, you need to understand them as an individual. And I've just as with your anecdote, I've had that experience when I've seen a gentleman who I know little or nothing about, and then suddenly I read a few lines, I learn three things about that individual, and suddenly it changes my perspective on that person. And it's amazing to see when teams have an understanding of those people, a little bit about. They don't have to know that an entire biography. They don't need to know everything. What they don't need to know everything about that person's upbringing and all those kind of things, but they do need to know what makes them tick, and that is the important thing. And whether that's to do with their hobbies, their interests, their past involvement in teams, or what culture that other cultures they might have been involved in, practices, those kind of things, it does make a massive difference. And I think it's one of those. It is still a challenge, changing people's perception sometimes from that kind of medical model to a social model, and it's been talked about for decades now. But it is something that is very, very important. But if the managers and the people that are hiring care teams have a better understanding of the prospective new carers' interest in people, then I always find that if they're interested in people, then they're going to be fascinated about the people that they're supporting, rather than just thinking about the tasks they've got to do.
No, exactly. And that goes to the heart of recruiting on values rather than thinking endlessly about skills. You can teach people any
Yes.
amount of skills, but what you need is a really good baseline of values. And in a way, I'm really pleased about the way in which the framework is centered in the values, which are about enabling people to live well and also to maintain their identity as people, and for people to be the center, not the diagnosis of a dementia. This is about people and how we support them. And I think this framework absolutely centers everybody in that essential focus, which is about the person they support.
Yeah, the person comes first, absolutely, every time. Thank you. I think just finally, just to kind of wrap up, from our point of view, I'd just like to reiterate what you said about the partnership in general. I think what we put together in the framework and the accreditation scheme, and the evidence that we've already got of the successes for people living with dementia, and the teams that are supporting those people, I'm really looking forward to developing our relationship and working together on making this change happen, because sadly we can't depend on the government at the moment, because the last things that are coming out are in the 5-10 of years that are around strategic direction. But I think we've got to just grasp the nettle and work together and really make that change happen, in how we work together.
Totally agree. And let's start now and let's make a difference. Governments are never in the vanguard of change. It's always about how things happen on the ground. And then, latterly, governments come to the party. But I think we've got to lead the agenda, and this partnership will help us to do that.
Definitely. Thank you, Martin.
Thanks, Sam.